Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Secular Soapbox. I'm your host, Apostacie, and I'm joined with my co-host, David McDonald. Tonight, we have a really exciting guest, and I can tell by the comments you are all just as excited to have him on as we are. We have Trevor from Believe It or Not podcast on YouTube. So don't forget to like the stream, subscribe, ring the bell, and share it if you want. Also, don't forget you can send your questions via Super Chat, and let's start the show.
Hey, welcome, Trevor.
It's been a while since I've seen people so excited for a guest. Not that our guests aren't exciting, but I can feel the excitement from all the comments. Everyone's just like, Trevor, because you don't seem to do a lot of like interviews or anything.
No,
So
I'm a recluse. Yeah.
you put out such amazing content, and we're just so thrilled to have you here. So
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
thank you so much. So I have wanted. Oh, what?
I was just going to say, I said this before we started,
Yeah,
but I want to say it publicly. Like, I have only just discovered your channel, and I feel like it's some sort of atheist sin that I've committed, because the content you're producing is phenomenal. Like the amount of Simpsons references that you have in your stuff is the perfect touch. It's amazing. I felt like it was bringing back nostalgia and childhood memories, and yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Yeah, Simpsons has a special place in my heart.
So if anyone, hopefully you all go and subscribe to Trevor's channel, Believe It or Not. He does a lot of long form videos. So you take a topic related to Christianity or deconstruction, and you really dive into the meat of that issue. And you do it in such a fantastic way. And I love how you put so many clips from popular TV shows from kind of our generation. So you do The Simpsons, you do some of them I haven't seen, but like, is it Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So
a lot of The Office, a lot of
The Office.
Whatever Tim Robinson does, I'll try to stick something from him in there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we want to talk about your channel for sure. But before that, could you give us a little bit of history on just your growing up Christian years and just kind of how you became someone on YouTube and your deconstruction?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up very, very Christian, very evangelical, I guess. So the church I went to was like, okay, it's from the holiness movement in
Okay.
New York, and then kind of into Ontario and Quebec. So I grew up in Ontario in this like little church, little big. It's the biggest church in the town, but a small town.
Right.
So there was about 1,000 people that went. And then, so, that's where I got my gospel, I guess. That's where I learned about the Lord. Got really involved in youth group, decided at summer camp that I wanted to be a youth pastor. So I went to Bible college as a result. Meanwhile, my dad is really getting into like charismatic stuff. So we ended up going to a lot of healing services, a lot of stuff like that. And then in college, I became a Lutheran for a while. I guess after college, when I was a youth pastor, I became a Lutheran for a while. Okay. Volunteered at Baptist church. So I've been all over.
Yeah, like you've run the gamut.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like my history in like with religion. And then, so when I was a youth pastor, I started to have some doubts, and I was like, okay, well, I'm also interested in film, so maybe God's calling me that way. That's my out. So I told everybody that I felt like God was calling me into doing film, but really I couldn't lead people to the Lord when I'm having doubts. Right. So I walked away from that, and then God called me into that, and then eventually I realized I don't believe any of this anymore. So
I remember that the stress of wondering what God had called you you know, the will of God, and like that feeling of like,
Yeah.
is this right? Is this wrong? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? I had
Yeah.
those same concerns.
Yeah, and it's like, because I remember praying like so hard, like, what do you want me to do? And then I got a call from my friend, and he was like, can you help me with this short film I'm doing? It's like, but I told him, like, that would, for me, that was like the sign from God. But I told him I was interested in film, so, and I knew he did film. But for me, that was God's confirmation that no, this is what I want you to do. But it's really, that's what I wanted to do, so I did it.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it's just it's always interesting to hear how we all come out of kind of the same background, how we all end up kind of where we are, because we all have a background in some sort of religious
Yeah.
affiliation. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But super just wild to think about. But what were some of the things that you started doubting, and what were sort of the like dominoes that started to fall first for you?
Yeah. So miracles, I think, was the first domino. Was stopping
Which one? Sorry.
miracles when I
Oh,
stopped believing
okay.
in miracles. Because so my mom died of cancer when I was 21,
Oh.
and
Oh,
I
sorry to hear
think
that.
it was one of those things where, you know, we had been praying so long that she would be healed. We had people come into the hospital room and prayed over her, and one of them even like kicked me out of the room because they decided that God told them that I didn't believe enough, and that
Oh my gosh.
so I didn't have enough faith, so I had to get out of there, and that was great. But then like
Wow.
I started looking into miracles, and I started like looking into how so many faith healers are just con artists, and I was like, okay, well, maybe God doesn't do that anymore, or maybe most of them are fake. So I that was like the first kind of tumbling down. And
Mhm.
then when I started thinking about, like, we had the huge gay marriage debate in Canada around this time, and this is just around where they're legalizing same-sex marriage in Canada, and I started realizing that I had no actual reason to be against it, so I started to change my views on that, and then so that chips away, and then another thing chips away.
Yeah.
And I stopped going to church because I realized that every experience I had at church was bad. So I was like,
Right.
well, I'm not going to keep going. I kept searching for churches that kept coming at the same way. So I was like, well, I can still believe in God, but not go to church. So
Mhm.
that's another thing off the list. And then eventually I realized, like, I've taken so much away from what I used to believe that what's even the point anymore? Like, I stopped believing in hell early on.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and it was like, yeah, I'm a Christian who doesn't believe in hell. And then, yeah, so like all these things start chipping away, dominoes fall. Yeah, exactly. And that's that. And I'm out. So
You're like, oh, you're like, I can still be a Christian and not believe in God. And you're like, wait a minute.
wait a second. Yeah, exactly.
How did you stop believing in hell, even as a Christian?
I read a book by Rob Bell called
Oh, Love Wins?
Love Wins. Yeah.
That was heretical.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I became a heretic.
Oh.
And yeah, luckily that's when I was a youth pastor, and that's when I was going to the Lutheran church, and it was already a very liberal Lutheran church. So
Okay.
for them, it was like, it wasn't a big deal. So I was the youth pastor who was okay with same-sex marriage and didn't believe in hell, but that was okay, I guess.
Wow.
It's so similar to my experience. We had the same-sex marriage plebiscite in Australia, and that caused me to really confront the morality of believing in the Christian God in the way that I did.
Yeah.
And same, I read the Rob Bell's book. I wasn't necessarily convinced by it, but it definitely made me think, like, if it's not true, like if there is no hell and no heaven, like, what does that mean for this life? And I told my wife about it, and she's like, I don't like to think of that. I don't like to. And she like panicked for a bit. And then a few days later, she came to me and said, if this is our one life, I want to live the best, most fulfilling life. I want to like go on picnics. I want to travel. I want to like, not, hug you tighter and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah. And it was a really good thing that happened in our lives from that
Yeah.
book.
I remember I asked my friend, he was a volunteer at my youth group, and we were sitting there, and I was like, what would you say if you found out there was no afterlife? Or what would you do if you found out there was no afterlife? And he's like, oh, I would start sleeping around. All right. I mean,
I mean,
we have different goals, I guess. Yeah.
we have different goals.
Yeah.
Oh, well, speaking of that, like, did you grow up obviously with purity culture
Yeah.
affecting you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Every let me just guess. Every young man's battle, every man's battle.
Yeah, I was a little late for Every Young Man's Battle. Maybe no, I wasn't. That's
Or
a
did
really
you
no.
have I Kissed Dating Goodbye?
Yeah, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I remember I was in so Youth for Christ had this thing. I think it was like called I and I or something like that. It was like a weekly purity culture group, but it was a weekly like group where you sit down and you talk about your struggles with other guys. So that all the guys and girls get together first, and then they split up and they talk about whatever sexual sins they're dealing with. So yeah, that was a huge part of the purity culture for me. And then Bible college, obviously, it keeps going. And
Yeah. So many. Oh, go ahead, David.
No, you go.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I know Bible college is where so many people go to meet their their spouse and get married, and I actually wanted. I didn't want to meet someone at church, even though I was a very devout Christian and I was all into the purity culture, because I really felt like whenever I would maybe start attending a new church, all the guys were looking at me like, "Are you my wife? Is this my wife?" And I was so afraid of God telling one of them that like I was the person for them, and what if I didn't like them, that I just wanted to stay far away from Christian guys, because I believed that maybe God would tell them, and I didn't have a choice, and it freaked me out. So yeah.
Even Bible college, I remember my first week there, somebody else in the dorms was like, well, this guy told me that God told him that we should get married, and I don't know if I should just go with it or if I should pray about it. Pray about it. He's lying. Like he's pray about it, but also no, walk away. He's a
Yeah. Exactly.
I had a friend, like a really good friend, who was dating someone, and someone told him that he was to marry his girlfriend and that he's just going to wait for them to break up.
Wow.
Like,
what a sleazy friend.
I know. And he's like, hey man, this isn't me, this is God. And didn't end up happening. They didn't end up getting married, but yeah, wild, right?
Yeah. But if you think about it, like so much of that culture is already based on your feelings are really the Holy Spirit whispering things to you. Like when we talked about God's plan for you, things like that. So when it's something like where there is like, oh, I'm attracted to this person, you have this feeling and you associate feelings with the Holy Spirit talking to you. So all of a sudden, just a natural feeling that you have, hey, this person is attractive, all of a sudden becomes, I think that might be the Holy Spirit telling me that I'm supposed to be with them forever and we'll have 10 kids. Like, it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
The whole like God's will and God's like perfect person for you was really like rough on me. And it was I ended up going through a tremendous amount of anxiety around that area. I went to a psychologist after church counselors and prayer wasn't working, and they diagnosed me with OCD or pure OCD around that. And the question, that the anxiety that got me to face was, what if Amy, like God doesn't want me to be with Amy? That was like the anxiety that I had, because I was vomiting at night and stuff, panicking that like, oh, what if God wants me to break up with my girlfriend, who's now my wife and mother of our child? It can be really negative, and it really affects you in a really horrible way. I had people tell me that or tell a girl that three different people told her that she was going to marry me. I had people at conferences tell me that they heard God tell me to wait and not to rush off and be with anyone because there's someone very specific for me, and all this stuff, and just weighed on me like intensely. Like, oh, I never felt comfortable like with the idea of dating or being with anyone, because I was like, God hasn't spoken to me with a booming voice yet. So
my
gosh, rough.
Yeah. I had a really close friend of mine when he met his now wife, like they just had an instant connection, they had so much in common, and it was just like, yeah, they're gonna date. But one couple at the church told her that God's telling them that they shouldn't be together. And so it was just heartbreaking for them because it's like, oh, God's against this. But it's like, no. No, that person just thinks they're wise because they're also in a relationship, and
Yeah.
they think they can tell you because, yeah.
Sorry to interject again, but something that really like helped me is I actually sat down with one of the elders of the church who's a bit of a homophobic piece of shit, but beyond that, he's had some good advice and the biblical advice. And the advice that he gave me was he brought me to a scripture that said, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing." And there was none of this like God's will or anything. It's just like, hey, if you find one, you find a good thing. Like that, good on you. Like, and if you want to get married, go for it. And I was like, oh, and I was like very freeing. But that's so different to what we hear from like the John Bevere's or the purity culture, where it's like God has this perfect special plan for you, and if you marry the wrong person, you're like out of the will of God. Like you're gonna have a horrible life. You're not going to be happy. God's not going to be happy with you in heaven, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who has an anxiety disorder, all of these different things just added up and made it worse. And so you're constantly going to prayer for things like this. Like, is this person the right person for me? Am I supposed to be celibate the rest of my, like all those things just run through your mind. And then meanwhile, you have the church telling you that you're nothing without God and stuff like that. So
absolutely. Like, I know we didn't really like prep too much for this, and if you don't have to answer anything you're not comfortable with, but you said with an anxiety disorder, but I have struggled with the same thing my whole life, and being in the church made it so much worse for me. And I didn't realize the extent of what I was dealing with was just normal anxiety things that were like diagnosable and are treatable until I left religion and started looking into it. So kind of, have you noticed any of it getting better for you since leaving religion? Because I know for myself, it was like, oh my gosh, these aren't demons. This is just because I would go out for prayer all the time and it didn't do anything. So
it's been so much better. And even just being able to admit that you have an anxiety disorder. Like it's just because I would get sick on my way to school every single day when I was a kid, especially in high school. I was just nervous all the time, but the answer was always prayer, and the answer was take it to God. And so even a couple years ago, my dad pulled me aside and he was like, I just want to apologize for not recognizing that this was something we could have gotten you help for. And it's like, well, he was dealing with its own stuff too, but it's like, it was just really good to hear. But at the time, it was always just go to God in prayer. And then after I left, it's like a couple years later, I was like, oh, wait, this might be a medical thing. I'm in my 30s at this point, and I'm like, I'm nervous all the time and I'm scared all the time. Maybe there's something about this.
Yeah, definitely. One story that I've told is when I was about 13 or 14, I went to my grandma to get prayer because I was just like, I just need someone to pray with me. And after she prayed with me, the next words out of her mouth were, now, if you let these spirits come back and they start attacking you again, they're going to come back 7 times stronger and it's going to be worse. So you have to not allow the demons to come back. And at like 13 years old, I was terrified of what kind of door that I would open.
Yeah.
And so when my anxiety, which was something I dealt with my entire life, just was being anxiety, then I felt the guilt of, okay, what did I do wrong? How did I let this sin in my life? And and so now I've realized since coming out of religion, it's actually can never say it properly the first time. Scrupulosity OCD or scrupulous. Anyways, that's basically what I had.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Okay.
it wasn't demons, but
Is
It wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I used to think that if the VCR was, that shows my age, but if the VCR
Me
was
too.
tuned to a channel that had the X-Files, that would let demons into our. Like it was.
Oh
like
yeah.
the level of my fear of demons.
Yep.
So I get that.
Anything
Yeah.
supernatural.
Yeah.
That's a doorway into your home. So
Yeah.
I remember when I had backslidden in my early 20s. I'd never smoked weed before, and but I was living in this house with like a bunch of some stoners and stuff, and they eventually convinced me to smoke weed, and I loved it. Got rid of all my anxiety really quickly. Now it makes me anxious, so I don't ever smoke. But I remember I was like sleeping kind of hooking up with this girl and smoking weed all the time, and she's like, "Let's go watch the movie Hostel," and I was like, "Oh." I was like, I'm sorry. In my head, I'm like, that'll invite demonic influence into my life.
oh my gosh.
Doing drugs and like sleeping around. And I'm like, sorry, I can't watch horror movies. That's demonic. It's so weird.
Well,
And I know people. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know people who have been out of the faith for years and still can't watch horror movies just because they were so conditioned to like fear of the demons that there's just like this response as soon as there's one stabbing in a movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It just shows how deep the roots really get into you, and you have to like create those new pathways in your brain to just get over it, or therapy or something. But religious trauma is 100% a real thing. So
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, go ahead, David.
Just say it's
hard to say.
It's very hard to say. Is it whatever it is it a type of anxiety or OCD that revolves around religious thoughts?
It kind of is. It's something to basically you have these like OCD, like these continuous thoughts, and then you have the need that you need to confess constantly, and you don't feel cleansed or better until you confess, and you get in this pattern of like confession. And anyways,
one of my first psychologist, the one that diagnosed me with or said I'm getting close to having OCD, was he said that one of his previous clients used to get really blasphemous thoughts as soon as they'd walk into a church. They get really horrible, disgusting thoughts, and the worst you could possibly think of. And he was convinced it was the devil. And he was convinced it was demons who were doing this to him and trying to pull him away from the love of God. And unfortunately, the way to deal with like OCD in this instance is to actually embrace the blasphemy, which is so against everything you're taught in church. You have to kind of like there was a while in my life where I had really bad OCD, but it was around my sexual orientation. I was never attracted to men, but I was worried that I was and didn't realize it, although I was going to spontaneously become gay and it would ruin my relationship with Amy. And so I started to like avoid things like if a guy was running down the street, I wouldn't look at them in case like, what if I found them attractive or something? And the way that my psychologist made me deal with that is like stare at dudes or like, I don't know, or like you just like things that like whatever I felt uncomfortable with, I had to like move into that. And so around the blasphemy and stuff, it's like if you walk into church and you think of like, I don't know, like a horrible thought about God, you've got to like continue to think about it, like investigate it, like look into it, and like and not run away from it, because when you run away from it, it becomes worse. And that's the opposite of what church teaches.
This is not really relevant, but it just reminded me. So every year my family goes camping in August, and some of my cousins are really into Cards Against Humanity.
I love that game.
Oh yeah.
but they're all Christian.
Oh.
So my cousin took out all the blasphemous cards.
What's left?
They're not watching. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to take a deck and I'm going to take all the blasphemous cards that I have and stick them in there and just see if they think it's like the devil.
I don't know if this is even appropriate to say. We're playing Cards Against Humanity with a very, very strong Christian couple, and the lady goes, I don't know if I should even say this. She was trying to understand what a card said. She's like, "What's bukakakak?" And I was like, "Oh,
don't Google it."
And I had to explain this. Yeah, and I had to explain it. Yeah, it was a fun night. But yeah, that's great.
I love that game. It's so fun to like kind of do all these things that you wouldn't normally have done as a Christian. So
yeah.
Did you kind of find freedom in that? Like, you don't have to go crazy off the deep end, but just sometimes doing things you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. Have you been naughty and you liked it? Is what?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think just being not having to feel guilty for watching a movie.
Yes.
Or like reading a book and like, oh, I shouldn't have read that thing that was just words on this page. Like, it's just the amount of guilt you live with in that world, and just to be able to be like, oh, I don't have to feel guilty about this innocent thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Just being a human. Right? Just don't feel guilty for being human.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're getting some questions from the chat, and a lot of people are asking about your channel because your channel's fantastic. So maybe this is a good segue into finding out what made you want to start. Like, we're all on YouTube, but what made you want to start? When did you start it? And it's such a well done, popular channel. Give us a bit of that, history.
So I started the podcast in 2018. Was it 2018? Yeah, around then. So that's with me and my buddy. We talk about religion, and the original intent, it wasn't gonna be from an atheist perspective. It was just gonna be, we're gonna talk about crazy cults, crazy religious sects and stuff. But we're both atheists, and it just ended up being, that's stupid. We would just like talk about a topic, and then my opinions would come out, and I'm like, okay, this is an atheist show. But eventually, so in 2020, I was working from home, and I was like, well, what am I going to do differently on YouTube? I can't, because I was doing sketch comedy sometimes, things like that. I'm like, what can I do on YouTube that I hadn't thought of yet? And I'm like, I have these random ideas for video essays. A couple of them were about religion. So I was like, well, that ties into the podcast. So why don't I try that? And then, so the first couple, it was like, I had 50 subscribers on YouTube by the time I had like 3 video essays out. And then just one day I woke up and there was 1,000 new subscribers. I was like, what's happening? The next day it's like double. And I think was it February of 2021 was when it went from, I think 50 subscribers to 10K in 1 month. And I was like, what is happening right now?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's like 3 years now.
Do you remember kind of what video was the one to sort of make that push?
I think it was the why are they leaving? Yeah, why are they leaving? Like, basically old people trying to explain why young people were leaving the church, and then kind of my opinion on it. And so I think that one kind of it took off because people were searching why are people leaving the church. I know a couple of people put on Reddit, so that might have helped, but I think that was the one that really took it to another level. And I was like, so
well, give everyone a sneak peek. Why are people leaving, do you think?
The internet is what I said. People can fact check and you can really dig in, and I think there's a less stigma now too around not being religious. Like there's more community available, and one of the biggest draws of church is community. And when people have other options that don't tell you that who you are is a sin or who your friend is a sin, like you have, and it's like me too with that domino thing. Like once one thing goes, you can instantly look that up and say, oh yeah, no, I was wrong about that, and then that next domino goes. So yeah,
exactly.
I compared it to, because I used to work in record stores, and then like over and over again get a job at a record store because they kept closing it. So it's like, okay, I have to move on to something else because the internet has ruined this industry, and it's ruining church too, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you find working at a record store that you had, like, it was hard to deal with like the demonic bands, like Black Sabbath came in or something, or like, I don't know?
No, because I already didn't care at that point. Like I was religious, but I didn't care about that with music. I was like, it's just music. So
yeah. Oh, we got a super chat, I think. Yeah. Let's put that up. Yeah. So thank you, Michael Beverly, $10 super chat. I'm currently working on a video in your style, Trevor, as I found the slavery one you just released so good. I have questions.
So good.
Are you available as a consultant for an hour or so? I mean, for money, of course.
I'm sure we can work something out. Email me. You'll see the email address on my channel. Believe it or not, email me. I'm sure we could work something out. I'm sure it won't cost you any money, but definitely we can chat.
I love it. Okay, and we have a question here from Ember. Ember had to go, but they asked, I gotta go to bed for work early tomorrow. Somebody please ask where the idea from the channel came from, in particular, the unusual super in-depth format. So we kind of touched on that, but yeah, you get so in-depth in your topics. And
well, at first I tried to keep them short. Like the first few videos were 15, 20 minutes. And then I just kept pushing it because I was like, well, I want to go a little in depth here. I want to go a little more in depth here. So it just like, eventually I'm like, people are still watching when it's 45 minutes. Maybe I'll try an hour. Oh, people are still watching. I guess this is so an hour now, but sometimes I do. So it's just as you look into it, and there's more and more stuff that comes up as you're looking at a topic, and it's like, yeah. And I don't want to go over things like quickly either, because I want certain ideas to sink in, as far as like, I don't want to just show one pastor and then move on. I want to show that it's something that pastors regularly do. Like, so I do want to show a few clips. So that takes time. And then, it's just because
do you have if you have like a thread going through your video, like let's say, I don't know, you're making a video on slavery in the Bible and you find a really, really interesting side tangent, but it's going to completely take it in a different direction. Do you like leave that tangent in and then bring it back around at the end, or do you like try and stick to one subject?
Yeah, sometimes I'll leave it in. A good example is recently I did a video on racism with the evangelical church, and then I realized that I'm gonna talk too much about slavery and their apologetics for slavery, and I realized that's just going to be a different video. So I just quickly talked about it in the video and said, I'll talk about this more later. So that just became a separate video because I realized it was taking up most of the time. So it depends, and sometimes I'll record, edit, be ready to go, and then cut a tangent out because I'm like, I actually don't need it. I just want it. So it really depends on the situation. Like, and sometimes I'll send the rough cut to my to the Patreons, and then the end of the video I ended up coming out with is 20 minutes shorter. So it really does depend.
Right. Okay, these two questions, they're kind of similar, but I'll put them up anyways. Robert Ingersoll asked, would love to know how Trevor watches so many religious videos, catalogs and references them, compiles them into one video. Incredible the number of religious and pop culture references you use. Yeah. You like, how do you do it? And how do you like, so many pop culture, like we were talking about The Simpsons, and do you just remember it all, or do you go looking for things that are relevant? Or
Like, do you have a
It's
folder
crazy.
of just like angry Homer, like
Yeah.
clip, like sad Homer clip? Like, do you like
Kinda.
because yeah, okay,
Yeah, I have. So my parents always said I lived in TV land. Like that was like the thing they said about me was I live in TV land, and I was obsessed with comedy. Like always been obsessed with comedic shows, and so a lot of it is from memory, especially at first. Lately, however, that well's running a little dry. So there, I do use other resources like look up quotes and stuff like that. It's usually stuff I have seen, but just to jog the memory. And then, but for the sermons, like, because what I'll do is I'll get a topic and I start looking up videos for that topic, and I'll usually just like whatever the most like viewed Christian videos are on certain topics is what I'll go with. So then I download just the full sermons, and I just sit. It's like a week of me just watching sermons.
Oh my God.
The first week of my editing process is, so it usually takes about 2 weeks to make a video. The first week is me watching sermons, and which is the worst part. So as I'm watching, I just like break it up, put it in the timeline, and like kind of categorize it as I'm going of like, this might be a running theme. We'll see. And then I just rewatch all the clips I chose again, over and over again, to finding that pattern, finding like different themes that run together, and then kind of going from there. And yeah.
Is it something you do like? Do you like? And maybe this, I don't know if this is a problem or not, but do you work on this primarily full time?
Yeah.
Or do you like? Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a dream, to be honest. It's so. I've been working on a documentary for like 6 months, and I can only like give it. And I'm a new father and trying to also keep like focus a lot of energy on making having our marriage really tight and good. And so like finding time to actually like work on it is like, so I like get like a few hours a week, and like to you know, imagine watching you know, something for a few hours a week, or you know, it just taking forever. It's been like 6 months. I'm like, man, this is hard. This is brutal.
Yeah, and like the video I'm working on now, I'm trying to get it out a little sooner than my normal timeline, so it's even more hours than a day. The last couple of days watching sermons, so it's just like, it's a lot. But yeah, I couldn't do this, I think, if I was working full time, not to the extent that I've been.
I wanted to throw this question up because it is very relevant to what gives you the strength to gather so many clips of terrible preachers. Like, how do you watch? I had to like I watched some sermons to get prepared for a certain show a while ago, and after like half an hour, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like,
and I don't even drink anymore. So, that was my answer before, is I would drink alcohol while doing it, but I can't do that anymore. So now it's like, I don't know, I have my cat, he's helpful. I also rage quite a lot and go for walks. So it's and now I'm also kind of getting desensitized to it, where it's like, I know these are going to be awful people saying awful things, so I kind of mentally prepare myself for that. But
that's a week is a long time.
I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's this it's like a thing you have to do in your brain. I remember when the same-sex marriage plebiscite was happening, I was on Facebook. I had so many people reach out to me and say, thank you for having these conversations so politely and respectfully. But inside, you have to like turn off your emotions and be like, I hear what you're saying, bigoted person. Like, but like, you have to be like really polite and be like, can I please ask you a question about what you just said? What about this? And like, you have to be really like, but it's like, you have to like almost turn off your emotions when you're engaging in this subject, because otherwise it just becomes, because now I've turned that part off. So now if I like read some anti-vax stuff or some stuff on, you know, same-sex marriage, I just like, I lose it. Like I can't deal with it. Like, you don't have the emotional capacity.
And I can't, I struggle with debating and even like comment debating with people, because I think I get more angry then, because this is a real person I'm dealing with in the moment who thinks whatever stupid thing, in my opinion, that they believe. And I just get so angry and lash out, where I guess with watching the sermons, I I mean, I get angry and I lash out, but I don't know where I was going with that. I yell at the screen though. I'm just yelling at, at a computer monitor. So.
It'd be so frustrating.
I need to ask for my own viewing pleasure, but have you done any videos on like John Bevere?
No. Who's that? Wait, should I?
John Bevere. He was just like a big, like, does anyone know John Bevere in the comments? He was like
that's Lisa Bevere's husband or ex.
Yeah, and like he wrote The Bait of Satan and Undercover and
a
bunch
I never
of other
listened
books.
to him or anything, but I just know the name.
He was like he's quite brutal, but he also talks about like when he says like I was talking to God and God's like, son, did you realize that you can do this? Like he refers to himself as son from God and things like that. But he was like I was a fanboy of him for a while.
Yeah. I don't know. I've probably seen his stuff. I don't know. It hasn't been coming up, but
you do a lot of preachers that I used to listen to.
Yeah, and I think like Mark Driscoll was somebody I used to listen to and I used to like, and I try to use him a lot because he's the worst. Yeah.
Kenneth Copeland?
Yeah, Kenneth Copeland. He's I remember my dad used to love Kenneth Copeland.
I went to one of his conferences when I was 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, good times. Yeah.
I went to Benny Hinn when I was a teenager.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Benny Hinn. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We have a couple super chats I just want to get to because people have been very generous this show. So thank you. Tish says, I think it helps that you can listen to it in the background, your videos, but also connect with it. It can go as long as you want. You can go as long as you want and I'll listen. So yeah,
Thank you.
pretty much. That's kind of how I listen to a lot of my content is I just do my housework, do dishes, laundry, whatever.
Yeah.
And I have my phone just playing when I get my analytics on Sundays for my screen time, it's like through the roof, but it's like mostly listening.
Yeah.
So thank you for that super chat. And also thank you for $4.99 from Agape Freedom Community Podcast. Thank you for that super chat. And my mom also sent in a super chat. Much love to my daughter and my Australian son and to Wes and Kat. Thank you for all you do on this channel. Our birthday celebration was amazing. Yes, we had a fantastic birthday celebration just the other day. So thank you everyone for being there. And next year, Trevor, you'll have to come. That will be a lot of fun. And there's a few more questions that I have highlighted from SR. So he asked, does Trevor have a favorite topic to talk about, like slavery in the Bible or young earth creationism or?
Yeah. I've barely touched on young earth creationism.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's because I did a video recently-ish about science denial, but so it was part of that. And there's been a couple of videos where it's part of it, but I don't know why. It's something where I don't feel smart enough. I feel like there's so many great people out there talking about this topic and know way more about evolution than I do. But yeah, I'll visit it again. But it is fascinating just the way people will deny science and the excuses and the arguments, and it just blows my mind. But as far as like favorite topics, I don't know. I don't know. I like it. I like it all.
Yeah.
And all the stuff I hate, I love to talk about. If I could not talk about slavery again, that'd be great. But I'm sure it will come up again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Those two videos were emotionally rough. The most emotionally rough, I think, for me recently was I did a video about the church's teaching on transgenderism, quote unquote.
Okay.
Someone close to me has recently come out as trans, and just to see the vitriol and hate towards this person I love so dearly, it just it really
yeah.
It's so disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you, like, does an idea spark you for a certain topic, or just kind of what's happening? Like where do you kind of, do you have like a whole list of things, or?
I have a list, but I haven't checked it in a while. Because usually,
okay.
like, while I'm working on a video, I'm like, oh, this is what I should do for the next one. So when I'm working on one video, I have an idea in my head for the next one. So that's
Okay.
kind of usually how it. How at first, the ex-Christian subreddit and just see what people were talking about and try to come up with a topic from there, or I would see what was happening in the comments, because I was like, I mean, at first, anxiety disorder, right? Like, when things first started taking off, my thought was, this is all I have. I think all those people are coming now and subscribing, and I'm not going to have anything to say. I'm going to burn it all out, and I'm not going to have anything. So I was kind of freaking out, and I think like there was like this time where I was like, oh, maybe this is the last one. How am I going to think? And then I realized that no, the evangelical world, the Christian world, is going to give me enough ammunition. I'm going to be able to talk about this till the day I die. So.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if the last few years have shown anything, it's like every day there's something new that you can make a video on. So they're just giving you your content.
Yeah, like the whole thing in Alabama with the embryos as
I just thought of that. I'm like, oh, they're probably going to do a video on that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Not the one I'm working on now, but it's going to be a big part of the next video. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait
Is
for that
that so my wife Amy and I had our boy Atlas through IVF, and we have like I think 3 or 4 eggs or something frozen still. Like if we were in Alabama, what would happen? Like what would because like if they're considered life, like or human life, like will we be legally required to like pay for them to be frozen forever, or which is like $500-600 a year, or would we have to like give them to someone like surrogacy or something? Like what would happen? Like I have no idea what the laws are in this would be now.
Yeah, everybody's struggling right now in Alabama. I think all the IVF clinics are just at all they don't do. So there's because I think that's right now, like we don't know what else to do right now. So.
Oh no.
It's breaking up. Sorry.
It went. Could you just repeat what you said the last little bit? Because it got a little robotic-y, and I want to.
Oh no!
It's okay. It's good now, but go ahead.
No, I think everybody's at a standstill in Alabama right now. I think they're really struggling to figure out what to do, and so like IVF clinics are kind of not doing anything right now, as far as I've heard, because they're not sure where anything stands within the law. So. Basically, I think they're saying, for now, just make sure you keep it frozen, and we'll see from here on out. Because people freeze easily and come back to life as people. Yeah.
I just throw my kids in the freezer whenever they're. I'm like, I'm done for today. To the freezer with you. That makes no sense.
That was so good, actually.
Yeah.
So good.
Get a break. No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. SR wants to know, have you ever done an outtake video where it's just you rage quitting while preparing for a video?
No, but I should.
You should. You really should.
That would be great. I will. But by the time I'm recording, I'm not rage quitting as often. A couple times.
Yeah.
But it happens. It really happens. So
has there been a specifically ragey? Is there a specifically ragey person for you or clip? Like something that like you just like you almost dread having to do a video on that subject or person?
Purity culture is a big one, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's certain people, if I have to watch Mark Driscoll, I know I'm gonna be raging a lot. John MacArthur. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because John MacArthur's one I watched a lot before. So when you put his clips in, I'm always like, ooh, but also really annoyed that I used to watch him. Yeah.
Like he had this big rant, and I don't even remember if I used much of it, but about how like women in the workplace and how they're doing it because the devil wants men to feel emasculated at work, and like just where are you getting it? Yeah.
I've never gone into work and been working with women and been like, I feel so emasculated. Like that's that's so bizarre. It says more about him than it does anything else. Like
100%. Yeah. A couple of people are saying John Piper.
Mm-hmm.
yes, I rage quit with John Piper, but he's also fascinating to me because he thinks he's so poetic, and I just find that so hilarious. So that kind of helps, where he thinks he's so wise and so poetic, and just like the way he says everything, you can tell he thinks he's saying the most important thing that's ever been said. And there's something about that makes it funny to me, because he's not that.
No.
but he's still an awful person. So yeah, I agree with him sometimes too.
Yeah. I want to know more about him and his relationship with his son, because Abraham,
yeah, I love him.
I love Abraham.
Yeah.
And I know he doesn't really talk about his dad on his social media, which is fine. That's their relationship and he doesn't need to. But I'm so curious if there is any connection between the two of them. Do they have family dinners? Does he say, hey, like, how's your ministry? Oh, how's your social media platform? Like, completely opposites. And how did Abraham get to where he is? So I love what he does. But
So who's Abraham Piper's his son? Is he like
you don't know Abraham Piper?
Yeah.
You have to follow him.
Yeah, he's great on TikTok. He's because it's like a lot of atheist content, but like a lot of just linguistics. And
I learn a lot from him.
Yeah, he's a very smart man.
Wait, so he's not a Christian?
No. I don't even know if he classifies himself as an atheist.
No, I don't know either, but like
he just is out of Christianity. And
we had a pastor. We had a senior pastor that was like almost lost his job because his children weren't believers. And they're like, because the Bible says like, you'll know them by the fruits of their children or whatever. Like I was something like that. Like I don't really remember, but that's wild to me that someone,
somebody with that famous of a dad preacher. And now he is like this super outspoken non-believer. Yeah. You'll love his content.
And a lot of times too, like those big preachers, they're grooming their kids to take over the business. So, and you can see old clips of Abraham like preaching or opening things for his dad and stuff, because I think that was always the plan. And then whatever happened. Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that. Yeah. I'm going to have to go on a deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm so curious now because I love Abraham. This has been awesome. I love. So your next video, can you give us a little hint? Did you tell us what it's about, or you just? Oh, is it a secret?
I'm afraid I'm gonna get canceled, but I'm probably safe here. But it is. It's about how evangelical pastors are freaking out right now and so excited about what's happening in Israel, and how. How this is like the end times, and we have to support Israel no matter what, and and like very dehumanizing to the Palestinian people, and just like so it'll be a polarizing one, I think. But it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and we'll see what the reaction will be. And then after that, the plan is I'm going to talk about morality and just like how Christians are always told that they don't have morals, non-Christians are always told that they don't have morals because they don't follow the Bible. And I touched on this a lot in the slavery one, but I want to go further in that.
Right.
And it's actually harder as a Christian to have good morality because you are restricted by these rules that are from a different time and don't really apply anymore. So
wow,
it sounds super interesting.
I'm excited to see your latest one. If you ever need inspiration for a pastor to talking about like how amped up they are about Israel, JD Farag from Hawaii.
Okay.
You can go. He does a prophecy update every single week, and he takes headlines from all over I've actually been to his church in Hawaii, unfortunately, and he would be someone who would be super excited right now about all that.
One of the things that's baffling me with all these sermons I'm watching is how much credit these pastors take for predicting things. Like,
I know.
If they're just so proud of what they predicted, it's insane.
It is. If they actually stopped and realized like what they're being excited about, it's like,
yeah.
are you okay?
Yeah,
Like,
I know, it's like genocide porn. It's like people
Yeah.
literally get so excited about like, yes, innocent people are dying. The World War III. It's gonna be so great. Like,
Mhm.
and it's so bizarre.
So
Yeah.
bizarre.
One pastor said it's not genocide because it's only been 3% of the people. And it's like, what are you saying? Like, like you're saying only.
Oh
Like,
my
it's,
gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like,
Those are
yeah.
people's lives.
Troy Black, somebody mentioned that in comments. Yeah. He's one that's like, he's an interesting person. I don't know if you guys know Troy Black at all, but
No.
he's a Christian YouTuber. But I feel like when he started, he's me if I would have stayed a Christian. Like that's what my YouTube would have been if I was still on fire for the Lord at first. Now it's gone to his head and he thinks he's a prophet. So at first it was like Christian poetry and like inspirational Christian stuff. That's like he was a little awkward, a little nerdy, and I saw myself in him because that's me. I'm awkward and nerdy. But now it's like God speaks to me every day, and I can prove that God's speaking to me, and like it's a very interesting. I just want to do a full video on.
You should.
Him.
Love it. Thank you, Dandy, for the $10 super chat. That's very nice. Heart hug. Love it. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time with you. Just like wanted to thank you so much for coming on and spending your evening with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been
awesome. So everyone can go and subscribe to Trevor's channel, and I'm sure you have a Patreon as well. Yeah. So I'm sure all the links are in the show notes, but Believe It or Not is the name of your channel. So yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to end on, or?
Well, I actually have one last question.
Oh, sorry, David. I'm sorry. Go for
that's
it.
Okay. My question is just, what advice would you give to yourself if you know what you know now back when you were deconstructing?
I think it would be the advice that that I got from a Christian, and that you can't, if God's real, no amount of searching could prove him wrong because he's real. And so whatever your questions are, if you're afraid that it's going to lead away from God, then that only means he's not there. So nothing, if God's there, nothing can lead you away from him. And I mean, it was bad advice for the Christian to tell me that, because I did eventually walk away, but it's something that I think about often, where it's like, yeah, if I had a question, because I remember there were times where I would like sit there not wanting to watch an atheist video or something, or like a skeptic video, because I didn't want to stop believing something, like when it came to healing or whatever. I didn't want to watch this James Randi video, because what if I stopped believing in whatever? But then I realized, like, yeah, if it's true, then they're not going to be able to it's a whole thing. But
you shouldn't have to protect your faith.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Oh,
thank you, Wade. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you so much, Trevor, for coming on. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and finally finding your channel and being able to just binge it. I've got so much content to watch. And thank you everyone for coming out to Secular Soapbox this Saturday on Women Atheists Unload. We have Dr. Daryl Ray and Godless Liz with Sunny Shell about sex and God. A show not to miss at 3:30 Central. And we'd also like to thank our patrons, who are bring that up again. Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, Phil Calderone. Oh my gosh, sorry guys. Amanda McLeod and Logan Fisher. I get names wrong sometimes.
It's all good. I don't know how to say a lot of words. I've said some pretty weird things on here and then had them clipped, so we won't talk about that. But yeah, thank you again, Trevor, and this was a great show, and thanks to everyone in the chat, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.